Hello, everyone. It is indeed my honor to be with you today at the Pan-African Society for Musical Arts Education Conference. And I am deeply grateful to your organization and especially to Dr. Benon Kigozi, who made this session possible. I'm also deeply grateful for all of you who are allowing me to spend some of your precious time with you, talking about some of my best friends in the whole world and how they have helped me to become a better pianist, a better teacher, and a better musician, and hopefully a better person. My name is Scott Price, and I currently teach at the University of South Carolina in the United States of America. And for the last 25 years, I have been so very fortunate to spend time with children with autism and other neurodiversities and to help them realize their potential in music making and in music performance. I run a program called the Carolina Life Song Initiative, and our job is to welcome students with all kinds of unique learning challenges, whether that be autism, developmental delays, vision impairments, hearing impairments, dyslexia, or Down syndrome, and to try and help them realize their potential in music making and in music performance. And I wish that everything I had to share to you today were my own ideas, but to be honest with you, they are everything that my students have taught me over the years. I believe that all children are brilliant until someone tells them that they aren't. I also believe that all children are brilliant educators in their own right. And when they come into my studio, I really do view it as I am the student, they are the teacher. I don't tell them that, but I know that when they come into my studio, that I'm going to get a master lesson in pedagogy in every way. And so I'm so grateful for the time that they share with me. So what I'd like to do today is just maybe talk a little bit about autism, about the diagnostic criteria, and how they help me reframe or adapt my teaching to meet the needs of my students. And then I'd like to show you some video of what an average lesson might look like in my class. Um, and then perhaps we'll have just a little performance at the end. So I'm sure all of you know someone who has autism, or perhaps you're teaching someone with autism right now. But I thought it might be useful for us to just review a little bit about what autism is. Now, autism is a developmental disorder, and I know the medical literature likes to use words like disorder, deficit, comorbidity, high functioning, low functioning, and there certainly is a valid reason for that. But I like to use the word differences because if I use the word difference, then all of my students are on a level playing field. They are able to be part of this wonderful thing that we do instead of being less than and excluded. Being different just means we need to learn a little bit more about each other and how we communicate and how we view the world a little bit differently. So autism is a developmental disorder, and we call it a spectrum disorder, meaning that on one side of the spectrum, you may have somebody who is high functioning, who we may not even know has autism. On the other end of the spectrum, we may have someone who needs 24-hour a day, 7-day a week care to do the things that they do and to learn the things that they need to learn. And there's a saying that if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Everybody on that spectrum is going to have a different way of viewing the world and a different way of communicating. So the diagnostic criteria for determining if someone has autism are very long and very detailed. But I thought we could categorize those into three different units that help me redefine and adapt my teaching. And those units or categories are differences in social behavior, differences in social communication, and differences in imaginative thought. So what do I mean by all of that? Well, if we talk about differences in social behavior, um, if we were to meet each other there at the conference, we would have a certain set of social behaviors that we knew to exhibit and a certain set of social behaviors that we know we could not exhibit. And a lot of those are based on observing someone's age, someone's gender, their social position, their profession, and many other factors as well. We would know how much personal space to keep between each other. We would know how much eye contact to make. We would know if we should extend our hand for a greeting or if we should wait to have a hand extended to us. We would also know how hard to squeeze the hand or how long to maintain that contact, and through a lot of nonverbal cues, when to let go and break that contact. Now, all of us have learned those things, maybe with a little help from our parents or our teachers when we were young, but for the most part, we have observed those behaviors, we have decoded them, we have put them into action, and we have learned how to transfer them to other social situations with some variations here and there. Now, a person with autism may not be able to observe those behaviors, decode them, put them into action, or transfer them to other situations with variation. They need to be taught all of those behaviors so that they have an idea what's coming next and how to operate in this societal thing that we do. Otherwise, anxiety and frustration can surface, and fear, and also guilt and shame. And we want to avoid that. So, an example of this may be perhaps it's 3:50 in the afternoon and I'm teaching a lesson and I hear boom, boom, boom on the door and then boom, boom, boom again. This is my next student with autism. They're not misbehaving. They're not being rude. They are just so excited for their lesson. They're so excited for the music. They're so excited to show me what they've done through the week. And let's face it, you and I may be one of the few special people in their lives with whom they have a relationship. And so they're just excited to see you as well. So what I need to do is I need to put on what I usually call my perpetual smile, which is my warm smile, my eyes, my facial expressions, my warm and slow body language, and also my warm speaking tone. And I need to open up the door, smile, and say, I am so glad to see you today. I can just tell you're going to have a great piano lesson. But you know what? Joey is still in here having his lesson, and I need to help him until 4 o'clock. So can you wait outside quietly with mommy and daddy? And at 4 o'clock, I'll open the door and I'll say hello. And can you say hello to me? And then I will invite you into my office. I will help you with your coat. I'll show you where to put your books. I'll help you get your books ready. And then can you sit on the piano bench very quietly while I get ready? And then I'll ask you if you're ready to begin. Can you do all of those things for me? Okay, thank you. I'll see you in a few minutes. And then I close the door. Now, I made a promise for 4 o'clock, so I have to make sure that I keep that promise at 4 o'clock. But what we just did was I taught my student all of the necessary behaviors to be ready for the social situation, to navigate the social situation, and how to focus for the lesson. And then when they get into the lesson, I've taught them all of the social behaviors to be able to navigate the learning process. So that's what I mean by a deficit in social behaviors or a difference in social behavior. I need to teach them the behaviors necessary to approach the lesson and the behaviors necessary to navigate the piano lesson. So category number 2, what do I mean by differences in social communication? Well, I need to remember that some of my students with autism may be nonverbal. Maybe a lot of their behaviors or their communication happens through body language. Maybe they don't speak at all, or maybe they're minimally verbal. I also need to remember that some of my students with autism may have developmental delays, which mean that they don't have a vocabulary or they have a limited vocabulary. So, we use a really weird vocabulary in music, some words that just don't show up in other contexts. And then we sometimes use normal everyday words in a very strange context in music making. So if I start talking about a key that we're playing in or a key on the piano, my students may be thinking of these, their car key or their key for their house. So I can't assume anything. I need to teach the student the meaning of all the words that I use and the meanings of those words in context. So making an assumption I found out the hard way is always a bad thing. And it's always fine to say, does that make sense? Or do you know what that word means? And I always follow that up with, it's okay if you don't. We'll learn it together. So to summarize, I need to teach the meanings of the words that I use and the meanings of those words in context. So our third category is a difference in imaginative thought. So if we were all together and I asked all of us to think about how much of our music study and our music teaching involves imagery, analogy, and metaphor, the percentage is probably pretty high. Well, a student with autism may not necessarily understand imagery, analogy, or metaphor, and how those things illuminate their thinking or how they connect with what they're doing at the keyboard and how they're hearing the music. And an example of that I like to use is if I have a traditional student and they've done a performance and I say, that was great and everything, but in measure 8 through 12, I need for the music to grow. There's a crescendo there. That student knows what to observe, how to think about it, and how to practice and make the change, perhaps with a little coaching from me. Well, if I have a student with autism who thinks in a very literal and specific way, asking the music to grow is the most ridiculous thing they could have heard in their life. So if you think about it, music can't grow. Grass grows, flowers grow, people grow when they're younger, animals grow. And a very bright student could look at me and say, well, Dr. Scott, you told me last week that when I play a key on the piano, the sound starts to decay and it gets quieter. So there's no way that can grow. So I think you're wrong, and that's not really good teaching, is it? And you know what? They're right. I told them to do something that was completely ridiculous. So for a literal thinker who needs to think about things in a very step-by-step way, I need to approach the crescendo by saying, well, with finger number one, can you play the first note very gently? The second one less gently, the next one strong, the next one stronger, and the next one strongest. That's what it means to have a crescendo in the music. And then they understand that this is a series of body movements that create a chain of sounds that are progressively louder in volume. And then I can say, sometimes we just say that phrase needs to grow, and that's what it means. So, in summary, again, I am using literal, specific, and step-by-step instructions to talk about musicianship concepts instead of imagery, analogy, and metaphor. Now, I'm not saying don't use imagery, analogy, and metaphor. You know your students best and you know what will work best for them. But I have found it best in my experience to couple literal and specific instruction then with imagery, analogy, and metaphor so that my student understands it from a very tactile way into a more abstract way. So, those are the three things that I use to redefine my teaching: differences in social behavior, differences in social communication, and differences in imaginative thought. So that's all great and everything, but how does it all work in a lesson? So in reality, when my student comes to see me in the afternoon, they're exhausted, okay? They have been trying all day. They have been doing their best to learn all of these social behaviors, to communicate, to shift from different situation to different situation. And they're just exhausted. They are mentally exhausted, emotionally exhausted, and physically exhausted. Then perhaps they're taking some medication and the medication is starting to wear off, but it's not time for the next dose. Or perhaps they have dietary issues and they won't eat certain foods or they can't eat certain foods, and maybe their nutrition isn't particularly good at that moment. Perhaps they have dysregulation in their sleep patterns. Maybe they haven't slept for 2 days, or maybe they haven't slept well for 3 days. So by the time they get to me, they are just overwhelmed, unfocused, and dysregulated in many, many different ways. And then, if that's not enough, they have to deal with an interruption in their schedule, dealing with the car and all the traffic noise, getting out of the car, getting all their things together with them, the change in temperature and the weather, dealing with all these new people and the street noise, dealing with the elevator and getting up to my office. So that's a lot to ask for someone who is easily overwhelmed by all of these things going on around them. So by the time they get to me, they're also overstimulated and they're just overwhelmed by everything. So the first thing that we do is we just sit down and have a chat. And that chat is a chance to practice social behaviors and social communication, but it's also a chance for them to just relax, focus, and desensitize to everything that's going on around them. It's also a chance for them to get used to me and all of the things that they're going to have to do in the lesson to be able to function in their music making. It's also a chance for me to observe their level of intellectual energy, their level of emotional energy, and their level of physical energy so that I can change my teaching persona and the pacing of my instruction to meet the particular needs that they have that day. And then after we have that chat, I get joint attention, which just means us focusing on the same thing. And then I ask for consent. Are you ready? And I have found out the hard way that if I don't ask for consent and I force the situation on my autistic student, that can be a trigger for outbursts or shutdowns or anxiety or frustration or anger. Things will work much more easily if they say, yes, I'm ready, because they're inviting me into their world and they're telling me that they are ready. Sometimes they just need a little bit more time. And other times it can be an avoidance behavior. And that's where parents can be helpful because they are my first and best resource. They know their children inside and out, and they know what works and doesn't work. And if it's an avoidance behavior, sometimes I just bring out my compassionate, kind, but powerful will to start to force them to be able to do the situation that they need to engage in. So after we get joint attention and consent, then we tell the student the routine. Students with autism have a real need to always know what's coming next, and they have a gift for lists and schedules of things that they need to do. And this also helps avoid feelings of anxiety, frustration, fear that can then surface as undesirable behaviors or behaviors that just aren't conducive to a good learning situation. So this routine can be spoken, it can be written, or it could be a set of picture icons that the student can look at and realize as parts of the lesson. But here's an example of a typical routine that I might use with a beginning student. First, we are going to do right hand, left hand. Then we are going to do finger numbers. Then we are going to do key names. Then we will do lesson book. Then we will do performance book. And then we will do improvisation, and then it will be time to say goodbye. So what's first? And they will always come back and tell me what's first. Now, I know that all of you are very busy teachers, and sometimes we don't have a chance or time to make a list. Sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle of papers. Sometimes it may fall off the piano. Well, if you just verbally tell this student and you forget what's coming next, just look at them and say, what's next? They will tell you what's next because they have a real steel trap memory for lists and routines. So next, let's take a look at some videos that show you examples of some students who are getting their routine at the beginning of a lesson. The first young man you're going to see is Aaron. Aaron was about 7 to 8 years old when this video was taken. Aaron is what we would call low functioning on the autism spectrum. He also has developmental delays that affect his intellect, his speech. He's actually nonverbal, and developmental delays that affect his fine and gross motor skills. He also has some behavioral issues as well. So what you're going to see in this routine is that almost none of it has to do with making music or playing the piano. Most of it has to do with learning the behaviors necessary to begin the lesson. Hi, Aaron. Good. That was great waving. Good for you. Are you ready to play the piano? Aaron, Aaron, look at me. Are you ready to play the piano? It's down. We're going to work on attention. We're going to work on eyes looking at the keyboard. We are going to work on taking turns. We're going to work on your fingers. We're going to work on playing black keys and playing white keys. Are you ready? Are you ready? You're ready. Look at me. Look at me, Aaron. 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 Look at me. I'm here. Eyes looking at the keyboard. So he's a wonderful young man, and taught me a lot and was very patient with me through his lessons. So you can see that almost everything in his routine just had to do with the behaviors to be able to get ready for the lesson and the learning experience and to navigate the lesson. Now, I'm doing a lot of touching of Aaron, and I know we are very sensitive to that in today's societies. But there's always a parent in the lesson with me because they're my best resource and they can also help with behavioral issues. And many times the touching is done with consultation, in consultation with them, because they can help me learn certain things that help soothe a student's emotions or help them focus. So we often do that in consultation with the parents so that there will be no misunderstandings about it. I'm also making Aaron work on eye contact. And many times for a student with autism, they don't want to make eye contact. It is a very intense form of communication. And if you think about what we are saying, the words that we speak and the information is clothed in an enormous amount of other communication information, such as facial expressions, eye contact, body language, the different sounds that our voice makes. And sometimes my students with autism don't want to make eye contact because they're overwhelmed by that or they can't decode it, and they are just listening for the information that they need. Now, in the case of Aaron, his therapists and his parents wanted him to work on eye contact, so I was doing that in the lesson as well. And music therapists and other therapists and parents can be a wonderful partnership because sometimes, even though we have different goals, those can dovetail and we can help each other work on different aspects of the learning experience. So our next routine is with Margaret. Margaret's a wonderful young lady. She was born 3 months premature. She's almost nearly blind. She has autistic tendencies. She also has developmental delays that affect her intellect, her speech, and her fine and gross motor skills. But she's just a lovely personality. And as I give her this routine, at the end, I'll ask her what's first, and she goes right back to the beginning and tells me what's first. That sounds like fun.
Yes, now play the piano.
Wait a second.
Now wait a second.
We're going to work on your fingers.
Work on your fingers.
Work on your hands.
Work on your palms.
And we're going to work on your scales.
Scales jumping.
Yeah, jumping. Good. You remembered to jump in your scales. Then we're going to do your pieces.
Pieces.
And then we're going to do duets.
Oh
Then
boy.
it's time to go.
Now time to go.
All right, hands
And
down.
the last one
Hands
is-
in your lap. What are we going to do first?
Do you mind or parents?
Yes.
Might
So
as
you
well-
play your C. So she's a brilliant teacher in her own right. You see me holding her hand. That is communication and contact that she seeks out. It's also a way for me to soothe any of her emotional anxiety that may be surfacing in the lesson. It's also a way for me to control her behaviors so she doesn't start playing while I'm still talking to her. But she was also learning to play a scale, and you notice the word jumping? She's such a brilliant teacher that she recognized the hand position change as jumping, and she came out of her own world to tell me that word, and it's a wonderful window into the way she's thinking about her learning process the things she has to do physically at the keyboard, and the way she's also viewing me and my instruction. So I listen very carefully to everything that she says as a cue on what I need to do next in the learning process. So those are just some examples of routines that I use with every single student that I teach. So now that we're done with routines, let's think about or talk about some actual teaching. The next video that I'd like to show you is Aaron again, and Aaron is learning how to do his finger numbers and also how to play black keys on the keyboard. Now, since Aaron is nonverbal, he shows me the fingers when I ask for the number, and that's fine with me. He shows me that he understands by doing instead of by saying. He's also going to be learning how to play black keys on the keyboard, and that process is a little different for him. Now, for a traditional student, I could do something like, okay, let's learn how to play the 2 black keys today. Can you look at the keyboard and look at the middle of the keyboard and you see that group of 2 black keys? Great. Can you take your right hand 2 and 3 and can you just play those for me? That was pretty good. Now as I do it, can you watch my hand and can you shape your hand the same way as mine and can you do it again? Awesome job. Can you just start playing some 2 black keys all over the keyboard? And if you get bored with your right hand, do some with your left hand as well. So that's great for a traditional student, but there are over a dozen things that I assumed in that mode of instruction that could have blown up for a student like Aaron. Number 1, I assumed I had joint attention. I assumed I had consent. I assumed that Aaron understood the vocabulary that I was using. I assumed that he could focus on the middle of the keyboard. I assumed that he knew his colors. I assumed that he knew his hand labels. I assumed that he knew his finger number labels. I assumed that he could play 2 keys at the same time. I assumed that he could focus on my model. I assumed that he had the fine motor skills to be able to replicate my model. I assumed that he could refocus, play the group of 2 black keys, and then transfer to another set of black keys. And then I assumed that he understood everything and could go home and that he would practice it. So that's about 15 places where that lesson segment could have blown up for Aaron. So what I need to do with Aaron is teach everything step by step. Aaron, can we learn to play a black key? This is your right hand. This is your finger number 2. This is a black key on the piano. Can you move your right hand finger number 2? Can you touch the black key, push it down, and make a sound? Great job, you just played a black key on the piano with your right hand finger number 2. Can you move to a different black key and play it with your right hand finger number 2? Great job. Can you move to a different black key and play it with your finger number 2? Great job. So that's the step-by-step process that is very different from traditional teaching. And with Aaron, since he's nonverbal, I do a lot of hand over hand and more guiding on the keyboard instead of speaking to him all the time. Now, as you watch this video clip, I'm a little embarrassed to show it to you because I make a huge mistake at the end. Aaron likes to play on the keyboard, and so we have to build into his behaviors my turn and your turn, so he knows when to play and when not to play. And at the end, I keep asking him to play a black key. He refuses to do it until I finally remember your turn. And then he looks right at me and he plays the black key beautifully. Really good. Hands down. Hey. Hands down. Show me your ones. Show me your ones. Aaron. Aaron. Show me your ones. Where's your ones? Show me your ones.
Yeah, yeah.
Hooray. Good job. Show me your 2s. There's your 3, 4, 5. Show me your 1s. Good job. Wow, your fingers are awesome. Show me your 1s. Show me your 2s. Show me your 3s. Show me your 4s. Good. Yeah. Man, you're getting really, really good, it does. Yeah. Okay, Aaron, hands down. Let's work on playing your black keys. Look at your keyboard. Aaron, put your hand down. You're fine. Look. Black key. Look down at your fingers. Black key. Look 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 at your fingers, Aaron. Black key. Look at your fingers. Black key. Black key. Black key. Play a black key. Aaron, your turn. Play a black key. Good job. Hand step. Aaron, look at your fingers. Play a black key. Yeah. Oh, come on. You won't even play one black key for me. Please. Play a black key, Aaron. Play a black key. It's your turn. Play a black key. Good job. Good job. So he's a brilliant young man. And the worst part of that mistake was that I could have gotten impatient with him, or I could have punished him for doing exactly what I taught him to do. So it's just an example of how my mistake in teaching in another situation might have resulted in anxiety and frustration and undesirable behaviors. But Aaron, patient young man, especially patient with his difficult piano teacher. So that's just an example of step-by-step instruction and how it's different from traditional pedagogy. So next, let's talk about the music reading process and how that's different for some of my students. For my students with autism, I find that I often need to differentiate between two different types of reading. One is note reading and one is music reading. And in our class, note reading is an exercise that can be done away from the piano. That's where we look at a piece of music or a theory workbook and we start talking about the clefs, the key signatures, the time signatures, identifying notes on the staff, and then the patterns and the harmony and the phrasing and the meter and the rhythm and how all of that fits together, so that we can really understand the depth of the composition and give a more meaningful performance for the audience. Now, many of my students with autism don't find that process meaningful. They may not be able to understand a lot of the vocabulary or a lot of the abstractions in the process. They may also not understand the meaning, the connection between what we're doing there and what they're doing at the keyboard. So instead, I like to use a process that we refer to as music reading, which is literally see that dot, play it with this finger, and touch it for this long so that we have the correct rhythm value. And then we just chain those events together. Now, that doesn't mean that my students are not learning the deeper construction of the work or how all of those things fit together for a well-informed and meaningful performance. They are just doing it more through sound acculturation of patterns and then learning in a step-by-step process how to make different sounds to convey the meaning of the music. So it's all happening. We're just approaching it by doing instead of by working in a workbook. So the young man that you're going to see, his name is Stanton. Stanton was about 8 years old at the time of this video, and he's going to be doing that music reading process. And for Stanton, I have to get joint attention, consent, and then we break down the process. And in his case, we close the fall board, we work on finger numbers, then we work on key names or note names, however you need to say that. Then I give a model, and then he does a small bit of the music. Another thing that you'll see in the video is something I call working in the process. That means that I need to be with Stanton every second of the way to validate his successes and to also catch mistakes before they happen by helping him find keys, by helping him count, by helping him know finger numbers and anything else that he may need. And so here he is at work, and again, he's a brilliant educator in his own right.
Can
Can we work on as one dawn?
Yeah.
Yeah. No? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, good, good. You had to work on lines 1 and 2. Let's do line 1. Finger number. You ready? 1, 2, ready, go. 5, 1, 2, 3, 5, 3, 1, 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4. Again. Ready? Go. 5, 1, 2, 3, 5, 3, 1, 2, 1 and 2, 1, 3, 1 and 4. No names. Ready?
Yeah.
D, A, D, E, F, A, F, E, G and A, F and A, E and A. My turn. Your turn. Getting ready. Get ready. That's correct. Where's your right hand? Where's your right hand?
Oh, come on.
Are you ready? 1, 2, ready, go. Away. Now, F, A, back to, there's G, F. Very good. Then, E. Then, very good. Great. Do it again. 1. Are you ready? 1, 2, ready, go. Very good. So, another brilliant young man. Stanton is low functioning on the autism spectrum. He has speech delays. He also has some behavioral issues, and he has developmental delays that affect his intellect and his fine and gross motor skills. So for him to pull all of that together was a huge achievement. And you could probably tell that we do a lot of celebrating in our lessons. That is because for a student with autism to approach a learning situation where everything is unknown and new and scary is just a huge accomplishment. And so even if they try and they make a mistake, I celebrate that because they tried. And there's always another try and another day and another week. So some of you may be looking at that video and just saying, well, that's not note reading or music reading, that's just rote learning. And yes, it is to a certain extent, but over a longer period of time, it becomes true self-sufficient music reading. It just takes a little bit longer for Stanton to approach that process and learn that process. He's 25 years old now, and he comes to his piano lesson every Tuesday evening. And I think my world would fall apart if he stopped studying because he's become a very good friend. And he is now playing in the Canadian Royal Conservatory of Music Repertoire Series, Level 4. And he also does a little bit of composing and improvising at all of our recitals as well. So he's a real success story. So since we talked a little bit about music reading, let's talk a little bit about music counting and how that process is different. We are going to see Margaret again. And with Margaret's video and her learning process, traditional counting systems, whether that's numbers or syllables, just don't work real well for her because it's too abstract of a process, too many layers in a process, or she doesn't understand the meaning or see a relationship between the counting system and what she's doing at the keyboard. So to simplify all of that, I use a counting system that I like to call directive words. And what that means is this: if we have a quarter half note pattern, 1, 2, 3, 4, instead of numbers, that becomes play, 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 hold, or touch, 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 hold, or finger numbers, or key names, or whatever the student needs at the time. That removes all the layer of abstraction And Margaret's still counting. She's still creating rhythm through that proportional exercise of length of notes. She just is using words that tell her body exactly what to do to make it happen at the keyboard. Now in the video, you'll see those directive words. You'll see some nonverbal pedagogy of me humming and singing. You'll also see me working in the process, just like with Stanton. And you'll also see a lot of hand-over-hand teaching. Because of Margaret's blindness, she needs that to help guide her. But again, she's a brilliant teacher, and she's exceptionally patient with her teacher.
Bell, bashful butterfly.
Can you play it again? Remember to hold your notes, please.
Yes.
Both hands ready.
Your turn.
Are you ready? There, now you're ready.
Now your turn. Butterfly.
So will you remember to hold your notes?
Yes.
All right.
So she's just a wonderful person. She doesn't study with me anymore, but we still keep in touch. And last summer we celebrated her 33rd birthday with a big party, and she's just as lovely of a person now as she was when she was a child. So, Margaret never really progressed beyond the upper elementary level of literature. But what she could do at that level progressed horizontally so that she was able to read some of the Braille music code and do some self-sufficient learning. She was also able to use Braille to do some composing. She improvised and just really was a real success story. So that's just an example of how the counting process is different. And I know you're probably looking at Margaret's video and thinking, who is this guy? How did he ever end up teaching college-level pedagogy and graduate performance majors? Her finger, wrist, and hand position is terrible. Why doesn't he do something about that? And you're right. But please remember that Margaret has some pretty severe fine and gross motor skill delays, and this is about the best that she can do to get the keys down on the piano. So sometimes I need to be kind and compassionate and make some exceptions to the rules and also allow her to do what she needs to do to make that happen at the keyboard. Sometimes these things can improve over a longer period of time. Sometimes they can't, but that shouldn't keep her from making music at the piano. So I appreciate that you've been so patient with me so far. And sort of to end this session, I'd like to show you one more video of quite a remarkable young lady who will be doing some improvisation. All of my students are required to improvise in lessons and at recitals. And we do that for fun and for validation, but it's also a way that we teach patterns and sounds that students can then become familiar with and know when they go to the printed music. And they already have a repertoire of patterns in their ear and the equation with the black and white keys on the piano so that they can more easily execute the music at the keyboard. Now this young lady's name is Brittany. Brittany was born 4 months premature. She is profoundly autistic, blind from birth, and she has some profound developmental delays that affect her intellect. She has almost no vocabulary and also some fine and gross motor skill delays. But as profound as those disabilities are, her music aptitude is equally profound on the other end of the spectrum. This is a young lady who pretty much taught herself how to play the piano with just 2 fingers at first. And when I met her, she had a repertoire of around 4,000 popular songs, hymn tunes, classical melodies, show tunes, and she had taught herself how to make simplified arrangements of these things. So over a period of years, she was able to realize that she could make her own music as well. And in this video, you'll see me giving her a motive, showing her the fingerings to play that motive, and then we sort of turn her loose to create her own composition. And you'll hear form, harmony, and some pretty sophisticated syncopations as well. So this is Brittany. It'll take me just a moment to cue up this video.
Turn hands down. Hands down. This is your motive. That's your motive. Let's play your motive. Why don't you use this finger? Can you do it?
So Brittany can't tell you much about music, but she can certainly show her understanding through what she does at the keyboard. And I realize that I am so fortunate to spend time with these young people every day, and I count those blessings every day as well. And I think they prove that anyone can learn and anyone can express themselves through music. So thank you very much for letting me spend some time with you today. I send you best wishes for the rest of your conference. And if any of you wish to contact me, please feel welcome to do so at the email address on the next slide. Thank you very much, and I send you best wishes.